3 slurs rapid fire.
God, yeah.
Hello, welcome to Lore of the Ring, where I describe wrestling lore to my co-host. I'm Dan.
I'm Daphne.
And today we're going to talk about Hornswoggle, who I've been hyping since the first episode.
At last. Yeah, he's almost a recurring character at this point, just because, I keep minding my own business and watching other things, like when I was watching Nonstop Total Deletion for another episode a while ago, and he just shows up right at the end. He's just there.
Yeah. So what do you know about Hornswoggle up front?
Okay. Hornswoggle is one of those characters that, when clickbaity websites do, top 15 weirdest things that ever happened in wrestling, there's always at least one that's oh, leprechaun! All right, okay. I mean, can you elaborate, maybe? So I know the very basics. You've talked about the fact that, for good or ill, Vince McMahon finds the concept of little people to be very entertaining. For some reason, he thinks that's funny, and so he likes to employ Hornswoggle, and presumably characters like him, for comedic purposes. I believe you've told me that Hornswoggle lived under the ring at WWE, and I know that for a while he was a leprechaun. I've seen him appear in AEW as just, a normal dude. There's something else I feel like I'm forgetting. Oh, he's played other characters, I think. I forget who you said it was.
It was the New Year's baby.
The baby New Year. Okay, yes, I did have that right. I was like, no, surely not. But that was correct, actually. Okay. I believe that's everything I know about Hornswoggle.
Okay, so up front, I need to talk about the history of wrestling and kind of the wrestlers with dwarfism and other height-related... Is syndromes the word? I'm not exactly sure.
I am totally not sure either.
And I had notes for this, and I looked up, tried to find what the correct word was. There is none that I can find.
Oh, man. Okay.
So, people with... This is going to be extremely hard until I set up the word I'm going to use instead of... So people with dwarfism and related height... I'm going to say situations.
All right.
That pretty much existed with wrestling almost the whole time it's existed, with professional wrestling. There's official documentation going back to the 40s, and there are other pieces of not official documentation, but promotional material that do show that they've existed even farther back before that. So they're kind of part of the DNA of wrestling a little bit, because they were there from the beginning. Now, the term for the specific style of wrestling they do hasn't been given a better name. So the Wikipedia article still lists it using a word that a lot of people consider a slur.
Ah, gotcha. That regrettably makes sense.
It is... Because when research for this video, I do find that it is considered a bit of contentious whether or not the M word should be considered a slur in that community. It's not something that I have any room to talk about. It's strictly inter-community.
Yeah, no, that's always tricky.
But for this reason, because I don't want to offend anyone when I'm just trying to talk about a specific art form, and I know when I say people with dwarfism, I'm leaving out other people who don't have dwarfism but have other things that would make the M word refer to them. I'm going to use the term mini estrella, which is Spanish for mini star. This is not accurate to pretty much anything, because it's the same thing as if I called all wrestlers lucha libre. But it's not a slur, so it's the best thing I got at this point.
And I'm guessing this was a term that came from lucha libre?
Yes, because mini estrella is a specific type of lucha libre of wrestlers who are under 5 feet tall. Not all of them with dwarfism or some type of disability. Some just short.
Okay.
So, again, not accurate, but best compromise I can make.
I think that's a good call.
Yeah, so there's a lot of stigma around this type of wrestling, even more so than the common type of wrestling we see. Some of that's for good reason. We're going to get into that later. But there comes an additional layer of ideas that these wrestlers are not trained in what they do, that they don't have a passion for what they do, that they aren't talented. That's completely false. These wrestlers go through the same amount of training as anyone outside of Mini Estrella. A lot of them are incredibly talented, not only knowing how to work a match from a technical perspective, but knowing how to work a crowd, really getting them engaged. So in the Vince episode, we kind of talked about how there was a huge boom in wrestling in the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we did. Yeah.
So Mini Estrella was part of that. Something to note also, just in terms of wrestling history and kind of where we're at in the 80s. You know how it's really commonplace now to have comedy spots in a match, something funny to happen. That's not something that was common in the 80s, because again, the idea around wrestling was much more of oh, this is an actual physical contest in the non-Mini Estrella matches. But because one reason or another, it was always kind of part of Mini Estrella to have at least a few comedy spots in the match to play to the audience more. More than likely because there's a non-0% of that audience that wouldn't take serious Mini Estrella wrestling seriously.
Okay.
So it is playing to kind of the bigots in the audience, because I guess kind of a foregone conclusion they're going to be there. Personally, I don't think they should need to do that, especially because I can look at wrestlers like Mascarita. I'm going to fuck up his name because I'm bad at pronouncing Spanish words. Mascarita Sagrada, who are just genuinely impressive to watch. So it's just something that was part of wrestling, but it wasn't explicit comedy, but it was kind of there, that they would do the funny spot, everyone fell down. That type of shit.
Yeah, that makes sense. I understand that logic on one level, especially in previous decades when people were still figuring this stuff out and there was a lot less of an emphasis on not, being exclusionary, and on, there wasn't a big an emphasis on being compassionate toward people who were different from the vast majority of people or whatever. So I understand the logic on one level of okay, let's just play to the people who are not going to take this seriously. Let's preemptively make it something that they can, enjoy comedically or see as something comedic. I get that, but it's unfortunate that was such a common practice. I feel like that's a common reaction to that sort of thing, and it sucks that they had to do that.
Yeah, it's really frustrating to see that, because I can go back and find a bunch of matches of Mini Estrella wrestlers, and they're very good performers, but it just seems like it's just something that they had to do in their matches. But anyway, during the wrestling boom, WWE kind of leaned more heavily into the comedy angle, unfortunately. A noted match is when the clown character, Doink the Clown, who started out as an evil clown, but then kids started liking him, and they were like, oh, he's a silly clown now. He gained 3 mini-me's named Dink, Pink, and Wink. He got into a feud with Jerry Lawler, who got his own mini-me's by the names of Sleazy, Queasy, and Cheesy.
All right.
They dressed exactly like the main one of this group would be. So Dink, Pink, and Wink were all wearing different clown makeup. And Sleazy, Queasy, and Cheesy were all dressed like kings. They wore crowns and had capes on. In response to this type of thing, wrestler Lord Littlebrook, who is a person who had dwarfism, stated in a quote, and I'm going to substitute a word by just saying M word.
Okay.
I'm disgusted. I really am. I want M-word wrestling. I don't want M-word comedy. This is a perspective I don't see often when this form of wrestling is, like, discussed, because it's often labeled as black and white of whether or not people with dwarfism or other little people should be allowed to wrestle, and making it a blank yes or no, but not really given consideration to context of how it's being treated in the ring.
That's interesting. Just because I feel like, without being too specific, I've seen a lot of online discourse about, is X okay, yes or no, and no one is like, how do we make X accessible and safe and like a thing that people can be safe around. So it's interesting that it always seems like it comes back to debates like that.
Yeah. This really came to a head in 2018 when Texas-based organization I just said an ooh-woo word. Extreme Dwarfinators Wrestling decided they were going to tour England and Wales. This got a response from the RGA, which is kind of like England's Little People of America, which is the Restricted Growth Association, who were staunchly opposing the event, describing it as a freak show. Again, there's no final word on this debate. I'm going to go through the arguments of both sides that I've seen. I'm going to make it very clear once again, I can't side on either side of this, outside of just being like, oh, it exists. Like, Mini Estrella exists. We're just going to talk about it, because these performers are entertainers who care about what they do. And their art form should be given consideration to, even if there's really shitty elements to it.
Yeah. Okay.
The first argument is, isn't this exploiting these people? The counter arguments I've seen go one of two ways, which is the first one being wrestlers going, no, I love doing this. I would hate to do anything else. This is what I lived for. Which, like, it's fair, but it's an argument that kind of has a hole in it, too, because you can love what you do and still be exploited for it.
Yeah, that's how capitalism works.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The stronger argument against it is when the wrestlers respond with, isn't all labor exploitative in some way?
Oh, okay, there it is, yeah.
That's where it kind of gets into the, yeah, you can't really argue with that.
Like, if I waited 2 more seconds, my argument would have been made for me.
Yep. Yeah, because you're always going to be exploited for something in our current socioeconomic structure. So, there's that. That's the first debate. Second argument specifically has to do with injury. This is due to the fact that certain forms of dwarfism can lead to physical complications that are only exacerbated by the type of stunts that are performed in wrestling.
Okay.
This is something that's very common, especially when it's Mini Estrella against a non-Mini Estrella wrestler who might not be trained in how to avoid specific type of injuries for these individuals, because their training in Mini Estrella is highly personalized to the physical condition of the person. No clearer example of this than from WrestleMania 3, when wrestler King Kong Bundy, who was 6'4", slammed Mini Estrella Little Beaver to the mat and broke his back.
Jeez.
So...
Jeez Louise.
The response to this commonly of the medical concerns is, well, professional wrestling is always a physical risk for everyone, which is retorted to with, but wrestlers who don't have dwarfism but have a disease or disorder that makes them more prone to injuries aren't medically cleared to wrestle. Which is then countered with, well, wrestling regularly hires individuals with gigantism to wrestle. Should that be allowed? Which is countered with, that's not the same thing, which is countered conversely with, why is it not the same thing? And then there's a bunch of medical nuance that I can't really describe because I don't have the know-how of it. And then it comes down to questions of bodily autonomy. should you be able to risk your life doing something in front of an audience that can also possibly endanger the performer you're working with if you both agree on it? So there's that. Third argument is sourced from an op-ed that was written at the time that the RGA was heavily endorsing. It's from the perspective of a mother who just had a child that was diagnosed with a form of dwarfism. She had a number of concerns. There's a couple of arguments she brings up in the article. First being that these wrestlers aren't the role models she wants her children to have, which is hard to argue against, but it's also hard to argue for.
Yeah.
Because you don't control who your child idolizes. Like at the end of the day, it's like she can like try to reduce the presence of Mini Estrella in her child's life as much as she can, but the child can find that eventually.
Yeah.
And they might even have a passion for it and might want to do it. There's nothing you can really do about that. So, the other argument in that article is the idea that Mini Estrella negatively impacts the public perception of people with dwarfism everywhere. That it reduces disability to a spectacle. That someone who went to watch Mini Estrella one night would not give a fair shot to a person with dwarfism interviewing for a job interview the next day. And I agree that art affects public perception. I'm getting that out of the way. Arguments that people say, no, it doesn't, they're wrong.
Yeah, I don't see how you can argue in good faith that it does not, but all right.
Yeah, so art influences people. The arguments against this that I think hold the most water is that the hiring bigotry is probably always going to be there whether or not Mini Estrella is there. That the idea that pretty much no one who isn't a bigot towards people with dwarfism and other height-related situations, that people that aren't bigoted towards them isn't going to go to Mini Estrella and then come out a bigot. Because they're going to be seeing Mini Estrella for different reasons. But what it can do is that it can reassert the negative perceptions to people who are bigots, which is genuinely dangerous. So there's a lot to that. Other smaller argument I see that's tangential to this that I see that this is the one I'm going to have an opinion on because I hate this argument. It's that the idea that people who are working in Mini Estrella are the ones giving people with dwarfism a bad name. And this is something I see across many marginalized communities. Being a queer person, I see the sentiment of like, oh, X group is the bad queers, and we need to excommunicate them to receive social acceptance. Like, it's this character on a stick that's dangled by society's empowered groups to try to split us further apart. It's wholly a way to stop organization of marginalized groups to gain any societal footing. This is me speaking to the audience right now. If you need to hear this...
Oh, no, I know. You know I know.
Yeah, if you need to hear this, your oppressors don't want to give you anything. They are trying to make you weaker and easier to control or defeat. Stop falling for it.
I was saying this to someone last night. I feel like I'm being charitable if I say once every couple years, but as a lesbian, as a queer person myself, and as a mixed race Black woman, I feel like every year, maybe every couple years, there are marginalized groups that rediscover the concept of respectability politics and relitigate it all over again, and then we all kind of forget about it for a while, and then it just comes right back around. I think we're seeing that now with some of the pride discourse that's coming around, which I don't really have much of a say in. I feel like that's a subset of the argument that's happening here. It boils down to the idea that if we're the respectable ones, then they'll be nice to us, and we just got to make the people who make us look bad, quote unquote, go away. Like, that's not how it works, guys. That's not how it's ever worked, because no one is drawing that distinction but us.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah, this was a whole ass tangent.
Happy Pride Month, everybody.
Yeah.
Sorry.
In the episode about Hornswoggle. Yeah.
Oh, man, I think I spiked my audio 3 times with that laugh.
I definitely spiked it when I got extremely close to the mic.
It's ASMR. It's DSMR. It's Dan's... Fuck, I don't know the ASMR acronym. Never mind. Moving on.
Dan screaming and then 2 other words.
There we go. Microphone recording. Dan screaming, microphone recording. We did it.
So anyway, Hornswoggle.
Yup, let's do it.
Yep. Just to close the previous topic, there's no consensus on this argument. I don't think there's ever going to be, unless there is some wide societal change where people with dwarfism and little people in general just get equal treatment. If that just had happened magically overnight, that'd be great, and we could get a solid answer to this. It's not going to happen that way, unfortunately.
That's an inter-community decision that has to be come to, and that would then be like reflected back out into what people choose to continue participating in, what people decide to dismantle or boycott. It would be a whole thing that neither of us have any say in. Yeah.
So, to properly explain Hornswoggle, I need to introduce another wrestler.
Okay.
Because he was introduced with another wrestler.
Okay.
Fit Finlay is someone who's been in the professional wrestling business a very long time, was working 20 years on the independent circuit from 1974 to 1995 before hitting one of the bigger companies.
Jeez.
So, first tenure with a larger company was with WCW, which he wrestled in 1996 to 2001. In 1999, though, he suffered an injury that nearly cost him use of his leg. And after a year of physical therapy, he did regain full use of it and could wrestle again, but he had lost pretty much all the momentum. He did, just because that happened. And when WWE purchased WCW, he came with them, but he didn't come as a wrestler. He came as a trainer for the company. And it was pretty much viewed like, oh, he's never going to wrestle again, is what the thought was. So we get now to 2005, and his time of debut was a really interesting time in WWE. So WWE, because of the brand split in their shows, where certain people are on one show and certain people are on another, they do a thing occasionally called the WWE Draft, which is a story reason to move people from one show to another. They can even use this to end storylines abruptly if they think it's not working. So
that makes sense. Your mortal enemy got drafted and the storyline is over.
Yeah, there is one that comes to mind when I think about it. That's just like, it was clear that everyone was uncomfortable with it. And it's like, no, you're gonna go to Raw now. So the 2005 draft is very interesting because they moved all the extremely over stars from SmackDown that got big reactions to Raw. So John Cena, Kurt Angle, Big Show, Rob Van Dam, Carlito all went to Raw. SmackDown either got people who were established mid-carders or were viewed as potential main eventers. With the exception of Batista, who was world champion at the time, because they needed another world champion on the brand because they drafted John Cena when he was WWE champion, and there was a month when SmackDown had no world champion.
Jeez. All right.
Again, it seemed like it was mainly set up to either establish names better because they were having trouble fitting in with the star-studded cast of Raw, which was already their bigger names, and they were having trouble getting footing. They also debuted a bunch of new people at the time, in case any of these other people didn't work out. To give an idea of how well this went, they did have to have Undertaker murder one of the SmackDown draftees on screen at a pay-per-view.
Okay, all right, that's a reasonable conclusion to draw.
That wrestler never showed up in WWE again.
Jeez.
He murdered him.
God.
I mean, it's good we didn't see that wrestler again, because it was essentially an Italian man pretending to be an Arab American, which was bad.
Wait a minute. Wait a minute. Who? I know this, don't I? Do I know
I might
this
have
person?
talked about it. Muhammad Hassan.
That's right.
Who they had because his initial angle. We're just going to be an episode of Sidetracks because there's so much interconnectedness of 2005. Mm-hmm. His setup storyline is one that I think it might say something about the WWE audience at the time. His promos were based around the fact that he was an Arab American who was getting treated badly because people were essentially blaming him and his religion for 9/11, which was a quantifiable thing in 2004 and even still today.
Yeah.
And if you watch the promos, he's a little angry, and makes disparaging remarks about people, but everything he's saying, justifiable and true.
Uh-huh.
There were very, slight subtext allusions where he'd say, shitty things, where you could interpret that as maybe he is a terrorist, which, bad. They were planning this guy to be top heel, main bad guy, same way Iron Sheik was, and Nikolai Volkov, and it's the foreign heel gimmick, just where they take someone with a foreign background and make them a villain. Issue was, this was an Italian man, which, that's bad.
Yeah, it's not great.
But the reason they had to murder him on TV was because they did an angle where a bunch of masked people ran in the ring and beat Undertaker to unconsciousness, tied him up, continued to beat him. But that segment happened because SmackDown's pre-recorded, or at that point was pre-recorded. It's live now. That segment aired at the same time there was a large-scale bus bombing in England.
Oh, jeez. Okay.
So they were like, nope, we can't have this character ever again, and they had Undertaker murder him at the next pay-per-view.
God. I mean, all right. You know what? That tracks. God. That's a way to end a problematic character, I guess.
Yep. The person who portrayed him is currently a school principal, if you just want to know where he's at right now.
Huh. I'm glad that I know.
Yeah. So Finlay debuted in 2005 with the gimmick of a fighting Irishman. His theme music began with his voice saying, "My name is Finlay, and I love to fight."
Oh, okay.
He is at least Irish, so we can be like, well, okay, in this case.
Yeah.
So, anyway, Finlay's having a match with Paul Burchill, whose gimmick is that he's a pirate. Primarily based on Captain Jack Sparrow, he'd swing down the ramp on a rope, threaten people backstage with a cutlass, and was crazy over with the crowd. We'll probably never do a full episode on him, because his time in the spotlight was cut short, because Vince McMahon didn't understand the character, asking why would a pirate be a good guy. He had never seen Pirates of the Caribbean, didn't know what it was, and was thoroughly disinterested when someone tried to explain it.
God, of course Vince McMahon doesn't understand pirates. Of all the fucking things for him to not understand when he was a corporate pirate of such a high caliber, that is preposterous.
Why would people like a pirate?
I
think his assumption was that the gimmick wasn't working because people liked him, which, no.
Oh, Vince, God. That's infuriating.
Yep. Anyway, after the match, which Finlay won, he went outside the ring, lifted the apron, and a leprechaun ferally jumped out, growling and shit.
This is fairly as in Feral, correct?
Yeah, just on hands and feet, occasionally running around on all fours. So Finley picks up the leprechaun, brings him back in the ring, and throws him down on Paul Burchill, who was still unconscious.
Jeez.
Finley then slaps the leprechaun and throws him back under the ring.
Okay.
This character was initially dubbed Little Bastard, which is a name with problems.
Oh my god, was it at least like the L-I-L, like Lil Rascals or something?
No, just Little Bastard.
No, just Little. Okay, I never get what I want. What a weird... God, okay.
Because A, you can't put that on a shirt. B,
Yeah.
horribly offensive.
Yeah, you can't do either of those, let alone in conjunction.
So this just became a recurring thing that after every one of Finley's matches, he would go out of the ring, call the leprechaun from beneath the ring, pick him up, and throw him on his opponent before throwing him back under the ring. This escalated with Burchill. No, my notes are fucked up. My eyes are fucked up.
Oh, no.
So this escalated with this leprechaun character being more and more involved in matches, sometimes just poking his head up from under the ring and making faces at the camera while the camera pans away from the action to hard zoom on him. Like, things are happening, but they want to see this.
Give the people what they want.
I want to see that leprechaun, damn it!
I'm never doing a Vince voice again. I don't have it in me.
Sometimes he'd attack Finley's opponents, normally by biting them.
Of course.
Continual escalation until he eventually handed Finley a shillelagh mid-match to help him pick up the U.S. championship.
Jeez, alright.
So the name was changed from Little Bastard to Hornswoggle for obvious reasons. Hornswoggle eventually wins the Cruiserweight title, which is the thing I said was from WCW, which had the lineup that was like, oh, it's almost as impressive as the people who weigh 300 pounds. This is for people like 250 and less, so faster moving people. He wins it from wrestler Jamie Noble and avoids further conflicts with Noble by hilariously outwitting him backstage like a Looney Tunes character. Shoving a pie into his face, spraying him with a fire extinguisher, pushing him into Kane, and most hilariously, locking him in a large box.
Oh, this is hilarious, actually. You weren't kidding.
So because of this, Hornswoggle becomes a more and more viewed character on TV, becomes a bigger and bigger part of the show, and I may have buried the lead a little bit because Hornswoggle isn't his full name.
Wait, that sounds vaguely familiar. What's his full name?
His full name is Hornswoggle McMahon.
Wait. Hold up. Is he... He can't be. They wouldn't... Is he related to Vince McMahon?
It's a complicated answer.
Oh, god damn it. Oh, son of a bitch.
In terms of what is considered canon right now, most people would answer that question yes.
Okay.
So we have to go earlier in the year at this point.
Okay.
This is all because there were a fair amount of vehicles to get the specific wrestler Ken Kennedy over with the audience as a main eventer. And he debuted around the same time as Finley. They even were a tag team at some point. First one they tried to do with him was Mr. McMahon being killed by an unseen assailant was the angle.
All right.
So that's a good
angle.
The bit starts with Vince coming out to address the crowd, is about to speak, but is getting booed so intensely, he just doesn't say anything, drops the mic, and walks out. Camera follows him as he leaves. He gets in his limo, and then the limo explodes.
All right. I mean, I'm down.
So the next few months were planned to be, the central storyline was set to be this huge whodunit. The payoff would be that Vince's wife, Linda, would do it, and she would be sent to jail. Then a clip of Vince would play and it comes from an anonymous source that he says in the event of his death, he gives the ownership of the company to Ken Kennedy, who would be revealed to be his illegitimate son.
Okay.
The protagonists in the story would be Stephanie McMahon and Triple H, who would marry. They were already married in real life, but not in storyline. So that Triple H could vie for ownership of the company himself. Feud would escalate until WrestleMania, where Triple H would win, but assumably would make Kennedy a star in the process. After this, after it seemed like Triple H is like, oh, he owns the company, Vince reveals he faked his own death. And that he planted the evidence against his wife to, quote, restore WWE as his true son.
Okay.
Kind of iffy on that payoff, huh?
Little bit.
I do like the idea of Vince faking his own death.
I do too. That part's really solid. That's fair. No, it's pretty good. So his wife was just gonna be in jail? Like, forever? It's like, is she okay?
She ran for Senate like a couple years later.
Oh god, good for her.
She did not win.
Well, too bad. Okay, well, never mind. Not good for her then.
So the plan was scrapped because 2 weeks later, I think the Benoit tragedy happened. You may have heard us talk about this in chat a little bit.
Briefly, people have brought up what happened with Chris Benoit. Yeah.
Yeah. So for people who don't know, I've debated doing a full episode about this, but I don't know if I want to do a full true crime episode of Lore of the Ring.
Yeah.
So basically, Chris Benoit, who had been scheduled for a pay-per-view to win the ECW title, no-showed the event, and after not responding to calls for 2 or 3 days, which was weird because he was a frequent worker, they sent a wellness check and found that he had murdered his wife and child and had hung himself. There's a lot of nuance to it. I can blame certain people for it, why he was in that mental state in the first place. But that's a different episode.
That's fair. Yeah, we'll have to save that one. That's pretty heavy.
Yeah, so for this is one of the few times WWE looked at the storyline and said, this might be in bad taste right now.
God.
So they waited, but then they decided, the illegitimate son angle has legs to it.
It does.
And it's revealed in storyline that Vince has a son he doesn't know about, and that son works for WWE. Again, it's set to be Ken Kennedy. But unfortunately, he failed a test of the recently established wellness policy that was put into effect after the Benoit tragedy, that he tested positive for steroids, so he was suspended and the storyline had to be shuffled around.
Okay.
They had no one else that could probably fit this storyline role. There was no big villains they could pick that weren't already established that would be, believable as Vince's son. So they just went a whole different direction with it. I'm just going to send you the link to the Watch Together room, because Vince's expression when his child is revealed is very good.
Oh boy. I really appreciate that they dropped the murder mystery angle, but they kept the illegitimate child thing, because I think it's kind of cool. They went from a whodunit to a whosunnit. I hate myself for that one, but I will never apologize.
It's an extremely good one.
Thank you. I wrote it down in case I forgot it. Marbles. The audience shouting Hornswoggle is just wonderful. Oh my god, I've seen that gif of his face before. I didn't know that's what that was from. He's so excited. Mr. McMahon's son is Hornswoggle. Oh my god, his face.
Oh my god. Just Triple H losing his mind.
This is incredible. Triple H is having a blast.
Triple H audibly laughing.
Triple H loves this. Hug your son, Vince.
Hug your son, Vince.
Hug your son, Vince. God. It all makes sense. Jeez Louise. God.
Yeah.
Vince McMahon's face all the way through this is me in Discord when everybody is going with a running gag that I just do not like.
What are your Halo opinions, Daphne?
I'm not... Daniel, do not do this to me.
Oh, fuck.
Oh my god. Wow. Triple H lost his mind. Sorry, the man with 3 H's.
So this starts kind of a feud between Vince and Hornswoggle.
Of course it does. God, of course it does.
Hornswoggle's trying his best to get accepted into the McMahon family. Why does it? What's playing? Did something start playing again?
Sorry, the Watch Together started playing again and I paused it.
Okay. So there was lots of him being, quote, tested, with dumb things like getting to be in the Royal Rumble by forcing him into a mini battle royal with mini versions of other wrestlers. Which then ended with the Great Khali coming out, but the actual Great Khali, who's 7 feet tall.
Oh, God. All right.
And I believe it was some shenanigans that got Khali out of the ring and gave Hornswoggle a spot in the Royal Rumble.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Extra things like, because he was Cruiserweight champion at the time, Vince decommissioned that belt, much to everyone who liked that division's chagrin. We only, kind of recently got it back a few years ago. It wasn't a temporary thing. It was gone for at least 10 years.
Jeez.
Vince tried to make Hornswoggle join the Kiss My Ass Club. Hornswoggle bit Vince's ass.
That's why he bit him. Okay, I wondered if that would come into this.
This leads to a cage match between Vince and Hornswoggle.
What? Wait a minute. Holy shit. Okay.
So, Vince wins.
Oh.
But it's after a lot of interference. First, Finlay comes out to help Hornswoggle, but then JBL comes out to help Vince. They desperately kind of tried to retcon away Hornswoggle being Vince's son, but it kind of didn't work. They did a couple weeks of storyline of, I guess it's a couple months, where they were like, no, Hornswoggle's actually Finlay's son the whole time. But that has not stuck at all.
Yeah.
Even Matt, in the Broken gimmick, acknowledged that Hornswoggle is Vince's son.
Oh my god, that's good.
I'm going to play the clip.
Oh, thank goodness. I was wondering if it was a nonstop total deletion and I missed it, so I'm glad you have a clip. No. Wow, the word truth had 3 syllables there.
Just a little magic moment right there.
God, I'm so glad that Broken Matt Hardy is with us always.
Just a magic moment.
Boo. Well, okay, I got Who Sun It out earlier, so like I'll allow it. That's fair.
So, much later, Hornswoggle tries to join the team D-Generation X.
Okay.
Which name is obviously a contraction of Degenerate and Generation X.
Yeah.
Initially, they were a big team, like in the 90s and early 2000s. At this point, though, DX is just Triple H and Shawn Michaels. We might do a video on them because their entire existence was to pull shenanigans on Vince McMahon. And seeing Vince McMahon angry and covered in a liquid is funny.
Oh, you're right. That is funny.
So Hornswoggle starts wearing DX gear to the ring, but is at some point served with a legal threat from Shawn Michaels and Triple H.
That's pretty good.
Telling him it's gimmick infringement. So this comes back a lot with DX and Hornswoggle shenanigans backstage. There's a very bizarre segment that sticks in my head. So they hang Hornswoggle like on a hook in the hallway, like by the back of his shirt.
Okay.
And they're threatening him with legal action. And John Cena comes out and rescues Hornswoggle from the hook, telling them that, quote, "Never hang a leprechaun on a hook. I had an uncle who hung a leprechaun on a hook once."
Wait a minute, that's a reference to something. That's a movie reference.
I don't know what it's a reference to. They repeat the line 3 times.
Yeah, no, it's from a movie. There's a character, it's from Johnny Dangerously, and it's specifically the line, "You shouldn't hang me on a hook, Johnny. My father hung me on a hook once. It was kind of along the lines of like Oscar, that God, what's his name? Sylvester Stallone movie. It's a 1984 comedy movie. It's about this good guy who turns to a life of crime to pay for his mother's medical bills and stuff. I forget if it's my mom that really liked that movie, but she used to quote it a lot when I was a kid.
I'm so glad you knew what this was a reference to, because I was fucking befuddled every time I watched it. I tried to understand it. I'm like, I don't even think Cena's an Irish name. What the fuck is the joke?
No, the joke is that it was in a movie. It is an obscure comedy film from 1984, and Danny Verman is the character's name. He says this. There's at least one other variation, which is, "You shouldn't shoot me, Johnny. My grandmother shot me once." Like, implying that after that, he didn't let her do it again, I suppose.
I mean, okay.
Yeah.
So this escalates till Triple H and Shawn are served a legal notice from Hornswoggle's lawyer, also a little person. They receive instructions that before the next show, they need to come out to the ring, and so they crawl under the ring, where they discover a series of tunnels.
Okay.
This eventually leads them to a courtroom with the sign "Little People's Court," and all the members of the jury and the judge and the bailiff are little people. It's about as mature and respectful as you'd expect. Triple H drops slurs a couple times.
Of course.
I have the clip ready.
Ooh. Go for it.
It's an extended court segment. We're probably going to have to cut around this a lot, because it's...
Okay.
And I might just use whatever funny bits for the opening bit, or just condense it.
We need a cold open.
We don't need to watch the rest, because the rest is just a summary of the rest of the night, which I can just describe verbally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, they like, pretty much the big thing that it ends up being. Partially thanks to Christmas magic, because Santa Claus is there. Yeah, Santa Claus exists in universe.
Okay, so you did bury the lead.
I can't wait for the 10 comments. It's like, what do you mean Santa Claus is only existent in the WWE universe? I can't wait for that.
It's gonna be fun.
So Hornswoggle wins the big match, which is a tag team match with him and DX against Big Show and like 2 other people. Hornswoggle ends up getting the pin. DX tells him they can't let him join DX officially, but he can become DX's mascot, which seems horribly offensive, but Hornswoggle's into it. So that's just how that went.
All right.
He had a couple of other big storylines. Like each brand has a general manager, just like the authority figure. Sometimes, rarely they're good, but most of the time they're villainous. At one point, because the villainous GM got beat up and put in the hospital, there was an anonymous Raw general manager that would send emails to the commentators who would read them aloud to the wrestlers who were in the ring. He was revealed as the Raw anonymous general manager after he was pulled out from under the ring whilst holding a laptop.
All right.
He had a brief on-screen relationship with the wrestler AJ Lee, whose whole thing seemed to be entering relationships with unconventional partners like CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, and Kane. Kane perhaps broke up with her in the most savage sentence I've ever heard. I don't do relationships, and besides, there's another issue. I'm a monster. I wear a mask. My only source of pleasure is eviscerating people. And even I find you mentally unstable. So I think it's the best for your own good if we stay away from each other.
Kane, that is needlessly harsh.
It's very... Which is sad, because the bits of stuff between AJ Lee and Kane, I kind of liked because I thought they were cute. Like AJ just like jumping into his arms and wrapping her legs around him and giving him a little small kiss. Or in the middle of one of his matches, she comes out fully dressed as him and just skips around the ring.
That's really fun, actually.
It distracted him and made him leave the match. But it was like, that seems like a fun relationship. I like the idea of like this super carefree person and murderer.
Yeah, no, that's a cute dynamic. It's a very common ship dynamic, I feel like.
Similarly, Hornswoggle broke it off with her after he got jealous of her hanging around another wrestler named Titus O'Neil.
Mm-hmm.
So, after that, he kind of stopped being paid attention to, more of one-off appearances and nothing really storyline heavy. Technically, his most recent appearance was filmed in 2020 for a pay-per-view, but that segment went unaired.
Okay.
So what are your thoughts on the tapestry that is Hornswoggle's lore?
You know, I feel like at this point, I need to start expecting there to be hidden depths to the people and subjects that we talk about. Like, I feel like I took too much of this at face value at first. Like, oh, clearly Hornswoggle is just this one joke and just this one thing. Which is, I think, a failing that they would have expected the audience to assume as well. We were talking about Mini Estrella doing joke stuff for exactly that reason. I did not expect them to do anything with him beyond height jokes. So, like, the Vince McMahon thing, I actually think is extremely hilarious. And I think more bits like that would have been incredibly strong. It sounds like a weird mix of wasted potential in a lot of areas and some really fun, silly ideas in others. Like... I don't know. As much as the Little People's Court thing is like, it's not great. I feel like there's a way to write that joke and there's a way to play that, and maybe you have actual people with that lived experience to write the script and do those jokes so that it's more like it doesn't come off as, you know, so that they have actual lines, first of all, and that it's not just height puns the whole way through. Like, I feel like I'm asking a lot of the WWE in the era that this aired. I feel like a more inclusive and a more open, like, writer's room, as it were, would have been able to make something extremely funny out of that did not make anybody but DX the butt of the joke. And I think that would have been a much better way to sell that. there's a lot of solid stuff there, and it sounds like he's been down to do a lot of incredibly silly and a lot of incredibly entertaining stuff, and like, I gotta respect the guy. That's a lot. That's a lot of stuff I would not have anticipated. It's oh, sorry.
No, I was just saying, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm thinking too about, like, you know, whenever this subject comes up, you hear about people like Kenny Baker and Warwick Davis because they were in big special effects blockbusters and stuff, and you don't really hear about. You maybe hear about Vern Troyer, because he was in the Austin Powers films, but I've never heard anyone describe Hornswoggle from pro wrestling with that level of attention to his career and that level of interest in what he's doing and what historical or social impact his career and the backstory of his niche in wrestling like has. It's you know, there was a lot to it, and that was fun to learn about. He seems like a cool guy.
Yeah. Something you might appreciate is that he's a huge fan of the Muppets.
Oh, well, then absolutely. I instantly love him. I mean, you could start with the Muppets.
He has a cameo in Muppets Most Wanted.
Wait a minute, that's right, he does! God, I haven't watched that in a while. He does, oh my god, I forgot. Well, now I feel silly.
He has a Miss Piggy tattoo.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I did not know that.
When the Muppets were on, he did try to flirt with Miss Piggy.
I mean, you kind of have to. I feel like, I know that male actors are the ones that usually flirt with Miss Piggy, but I feel like if I was in any kind of spot with her, you'd have to at least, take your shot. I don't know how the puppeteers would react to that, but I think it would be extremely funny.
Shoot your shot.
Listen.
There's the picture.
Oh, I love it.
That was after Kermit got kissed by another wrestler.
God, the look on Piggy's face. That 1,000-yard stare is very solid. God, what was I? I was going somewhere with something. Oh, I feel like my first clue that what should have been my first clue that there was going to be a lot more to Hornswoggle was like just in Nonstop Total Deletion when him and Rockstar Spud are teamed up and Rockstar Spud keeps like ruffling his hair and he's like, dude, stop. That's really demeaning. And he's like, I'm a grown man. And it's like, that's not a line that everybody would give an actor like him, because it's much easier to do the height jokes, and it's a lot easier to just make someone the butt of the joke without letting them defend themselves or establish any kind of dignity for themselves. And so there were depths to him as a performer that I'm very pleased to discover, I think.
Yeah, you get the feeling with Final Deletion that he got to write some of his own stuff.
Yeah, I think he did. I think it really shows.
Other thing, because you mentioned Warwick Davis.
Yes.
You're aware of the Leprechaun movies, right?
I am. Do we have to start another podcast if I admit I've never seen them?
I mean, I'm always down to rewatch the Leprechaun movies, but what I wanted to bring up is in 2017, I believe WWE acquired the rights to reboot Leprechaun.
Oh, that's right.
They did it without Warwick Davis. It's more of a conceptual take on what a leprechaun would be. And the leprechaun is played by Hornswoggle.
Of course. That casting, that tracks. That makes sense.
Yeah. I would kind of like to see him do like more of what a Warwick Davis leprechaun is. Because I like Warwick Davis's like portrayal of Leprechaun in those movies. Making him a feral creature kind of seems indicative of where WWE was like creative at the time.
Yeah,
which it's not great.
Yeah, Hornswoggle could have been rapping and going to space decades ago.
I love the Leprechaun movies.
Wholly and unironically. Good. Those are my only two pieces of knowledge I have of these films.
Wait, you only know those two things? You only know
I know he raps. I know he goes to space. I believe he kind of like Wishmaster listens to people's wishes and twists them around and then kills people in comedic ways.
He did that in the second one.
Okay.
I'm going to get onto a Leprechaun tangent because I don't get to talk about Leprechaun often. Most people tell me to shut up very quickly. They're like, I don't want to know. If I told you to shut up,
there'd be no show.
So, in the second movie, they trap the Leprechaun in like an iron safe because iron is a weakness for all fairy tale things.
Yeah.
And the main character's friend, adopted father, it's not entirely clear. It's just an old man he's friends with. It's very weird.
All right.
A real Back to the Future situation.
Yeah, you just don't wonder about it.
He pushes the main character out and goes over to the safe. He's like, no, I read those fairy tale books. You gotta give me 3 wishes now. So the first thing is like, I want your gold. He's like, and Leprechaun's like, okay. And he spawns his pot of gold inside the guy's stomach.
Okay.
And then he's like, get it out. He's like, is that what you want your second wish to be? And he's like, yes. and he uses that to get the safe unlocked. And then he gets out and then cuts the guy's stomach open to take the gold.
Oh my god.
The Leprechaun movies are weird, but I like them a lot. You mentioned Wishmaster. There was going to be a Leprechaun versus Wishmaster movie at some point.
Holy shit.
It didn't
What
happen.
a missed opportunity.
They also wanted to do Leprechaun versus Candyman.
Huh.
Which is a combination I'm not sure about.
Okay, I've only seen one of the Candyman. I don't know if there's more than one film. I've only seen the original. I feel like that's a level of serious you don't want to pit against a character like that, to be perfectly frank.
I thought you were being perfectly Daphne. There are 3, not counting the one that's coming out, that are considered what those in the business would call not as good.
Naturally.
But yeah, that's a very interesting crossover that that it's kind of like how Miramax wanted to do a Michael versus Pinhead movie.
God, that's right. Yeah.
I like the idea of the 2 very different tones.
I think there's something to be said for that. That's fair. I feel like you can make it work if you have the right writers.
The Michael versus Pinhead one makes me more upset than losing the Leprechaun versus Candyman, because both in isolation, for Michael versus Pinhead, both Clive Barker and John Carpenter agreed to do the Michael versus Pinhead if the other one would work on it.
All right, that's pretty good.
It's incredibly frustrating to just
really funny
that they went to John Carpenter. He's like, if Clive Barker writes it, and then Clive Barker said, if John Carpenter directs it.
I mean, guys, why didn't you do that? That would have been good.
Because Miramax ran a poll. It was Dimension Films. I'm bad at remembering 2000s things.
That's okay.
They ran a poll on their website as Freddy vs. Jason was coming out and said, would you like to see a Michael vs. Pinhead film without any additional context of who would be working on it? And everyone voted no.
Oh my god. Guys. Well, I mean, I know that there was... I mean, that makes sense, though, because I know that, like, Freddy vs. Jason, there were thoughts on including both Pinhead and, I think, Ash from Evil Dead. I know you know this much better than I do, because you've discussed this before in the chat. So I know that they were kind of in that, like, hey, what if crossovers kind of mindset then? So that makes sense, but I mean, like, when Freddy vs. Jason hasn't even flopped yet, you're just gonna give up on this other crossover?
Freddy vs. Jason didn't even flop. It was the most...
You know what? Fair.
It was the most profitable R-rated film until Passion of the Christ came out.
Wait a minute, that's right! I was watching a thing about just the behind-the-scenes issues that it had, and I didn't remember box office take. That's right, I forgot. It did a lot. It was just rough behind the scenes, and both fan bases complained about different things.
Yeah, what Bruce Campbell said is he's given two different distinct stories of what went down with it.
Uh-huh.
First is in the extras area of the Evil Dead Regeneration game, where he says, like, yeah, we're talking about Freddy versus Jason versus Ash, but right now the lawyers are just kind of yelling at each other because we have three big properties that need to be done justice.
Yeah.
Later in a Comic-Con panel, he said that the conversation was he picked up the phone and they said, we're thinking about doing Freddy versus Jason versus Ash. Can you do it? And he's like, can I kill Freddy or Jason? And they're like, no, they're going to keep him alive for sequels. And then he hung up.
It's not like he has to permanently kill them. You can work that.
They did show him like a test poster that was very good, that he's like described, or it's either someone showed him a test one or he like thought of it and pitched it to them. It would have been Ash holding Freddy and Jason's heads with the caption, making the world safe from sequels, Freddy vs. Jason 2.
Oh, that would have been good. That's really strong. What a bummer.
The script got turned into a comic book, so Freddy vs. Jason vs. Ash does exist, which features probably one of my favorite moments of Jason slaughtering a bunch of teenagers because they called him homophobic slurs.
Well, good.
He's just like, okay, this is how this is going to go.
Hey, we brought it back around to Pride Month. Look at us.
Yeah. Jason is an ally.
The only ally we need. Oh my god. Whew.
Jason Elias Voorhees, the only ally we need.
Yeah, ally's right there in his middle name.
Oh my fucking...
I don't know what... I'm so sorry.
I just thought it was a good fun. Oh, fuck.
I have to get at least one in per episode.
I mean, you got a couple in this one.
Yeah, I'm actually pretty proud of that. When I was before we started the watch together clip of the Hornswoggle reveal, like, just in case I didn't have a chance to circle us back around to it, I put whodunit, whosunit in my notes, and I was like, you know what, I'm gonna go for it.
Whosunit.
I didn't want to forget. Yeah.
Oh my god.
Oh my god.
I'm glad you had context on that John Cena reference, because I had no clue what John was talking about.
I don't remember. I don't even remember seeing that movie all the way through. I just remember my mother would occasionally say stuff like that, of just like, my mother hung up on me once, and it's just this gangster in the film who's trying to sound threatening, and I guess implying that he's like killed or shot or harmed the people who did this thing once, because that's the only time they got away with it. I don't know why that stuck with me. I think just because it's something my mom said. So just like with Lil Penny in last episode, you just awoke a memory within me somewhere.
Is that going to be a new segment on the podcast? Daphne has memories forcibly awakened.
Daphne has memories. Honestly, maybe. We'll have to see if we can keep it up. We'll see what subconscious memories you evoke within me the next time we talk about something. Speaking of which, what are we doing next time?
So next time, I didn't have a specific thing. I have a couple things I want to do that episode.
Ooh,
I want us to take a look at some wrestlers' social media, including one of who was voted the 33rd worst person on Twitter.
Jesus. I think we need to do a social media segment. I feel like we're getting to that stage with the social media stuff.
I want to go over some of the weirder gimmicks that harder to do full episodes on. I think that will be the why did this work gimmick.
Good.
And we'll probably also look at some of the oddball tag teams when we do that too. So next week is going to be a bunch of stuff.
Cool. Well, I'm excited.
Yeah. So see y'all next episode.
Have a good one, everybody.